Sound the alarms, Chiefs fans. There is a new mock draft out, and it's just a single round mock draft. Well, if you've been around here for any period of time, the Scrambling Armchair, where I talk Chiefs news, analysis, and opinion every day, you know that I don't make reaction videos to single round mock drafts. I just don't think there's a whole lot of value doing that, especially when the Kansas City Chiefs are picking 31st, 32nd, as seems to be the tradition here in Kansas City. But something interesting has happened in this mock draft. Well, who cares if something interesting happens? You care if something interesting happens if the writer himself works for NFL.com. Now, maybe I am a conspiracy theorist. No, I'm not saying that he knows what picks will be made. But yes, I do believe that writers for NFL.com do have a little bit more intel than your average writer. So if you've been here since before the Combine, you will remember me commenting on Armand Membou being the number one rated offensive tackle by NFL.com. Nobody else had that. Nobody else had that. Well, now we're starting to see all of these whispers that Armand Membou will go 7th overall, that Armand Membou is definitely a lockdown top 10 pick. So I do think that these guys are privy to a little bit more scouting information, at least, than other writers. Maybe not, team-specific intel. In this mock draft, Rhett Lewis, 2025 NFL Mock Draft 1.0 Raiders trade up for Travis Hunter. Saints select Shedeur Sanders from NFL.com by Rhett Lewis at 31 overall. The Kansas City Chiefs take Tetairoa McMillan, wide receiver out of Arizona, saying, would the Chiefs consider spending their first-round pick on a wide receiver for the second consecutive draft? Maybe not, but McMillan offers a body type and a skill set Patrick Mahomes has never really had at his disposal, a point that I make very often when talking about different wide receivers. And upgrading the playmakers around number 15 is never a bad idea. Would the Chiefs consider Tetairoa McMillan at 31? Yes, they would. Tetairoa McMillan is generally sort of understood as the number one wide receiver in this draft class. So how did he fall to number 31 overall? Well, I wanted to figure out exactly how credible this writer was. So I did a couple things. I looked back at his 2024 first-round draft, and he got 7 picks right. Might sound laughable. Guys, that's not that bad a deal. It's not that bad of a number. And there were 2 picks, so the Drake May and Jaden Daniels picks, he just had flipped, right? Those were 2 and 3. So that could have gone any way. You were getting smoke screens from all of those teams all the live-long offseason anyhow. So those picks, that could have easily boosted it to 9. 9 out of 33 is 30%-ish. So did a decent job last year with the first round getting picks correct. Now, one of them was the right player at the right slot, but a different team had traded up for him. But it was a team that both of those teams ended up taking the correct position for the draft. So I went ahead and counted one of them. Hard to predict trades in these things, right? It's sort of silly to go that far. So I wanted to take it one step further, and I wanted to go position by position in the first round from last year for 2024 to see how realistic the positional groupings are for this writer. Because one of the things that stood out in this mock draft, just flipping through it, scrolling through it, I wanted to see what picks were outlandish. What didn't make sense? If Tetairoa McMillan is falling to 31 overall, something wacky is happening along the way. And I'll tell you exactly what that wacky thing was. There were only 2 wide receivers selected in the first round. So who was the other wide receiver, and where did he go? Well, it was Matthew Golden, the wide receiver out of Texas. Now, guys, that might not be a bad guess for the number one wide receiver overall taken. We see guys zoom up the draft boards late all the time. That's something that definitely could happen with Matthew Golden. Notably, something that makes this maybe even more believable, Matthew Golden ended up going number 12 overall to the Cowboys. Would Jerry like to have a hometown Texas wide receiver that happens to run a sub-4 440? Yeah, I think he would. Okay, well, great. But just 2 wide receivers in the first round? How realistic is that? Going back to last year's draft, he called 5 position groups exactly right by the numbers. Quarterbacks, he called 6. There were 6. Remember, very few people had Bo Nix. Very few people had Michael Penix. I had both, but I'm just saying. Running backs, 0 of 0. There were a lot of whispers late that someone was going to crack in to the back half of that first round. Linebacker, 0 out of 0. Okay, maybe that's a gimme. Safety, 0 out of 0. And tight end, 1 out of 1. Okay, maybe those aren't quite the most convincing arguments there. But he said, or there were 5 edge players drafted in the first round. He called that there would be 4. There was one defensive tackle taken. He said there would be 2. There was 1 interior offensive lineman taken. He said there would be 2. There were 8 offensive tackles taken. He said there would be 7. The only places he really got things kind of confused, there were 7 wide receivers taken. He thought there would be 4. There were 3 cornerbacks taken. He thought there would be 6. So, those were his big sins last year. The things that stood out in the first round of his draft this season, Matthew Golden, the only other wide receiver, number 12 overall to the Cowboys, and then Gray Zabel from North Dakota State University going 13 to Miami. I think that is overdrafting for Gray Zabel. Now, getting into what this would mean for the Kansas City Chiefs. Remember, Tetairoa McMillan did not run the 40-yard dash at the Combine. Didn't do much of anything at the Combine. It was kind of a drag. But he did run his 40 at his pro day, and he ended up with a 4.55 40-yard dash, roughly the same speed as Rashee Rice, except that he's 6'4", 219 pounds, with 10-inch hands. He is an absolute unit. So, I don't really care all that much for this argument. The argument goes something like this. Well, those aren't the wide receivers that Andy Reid likes to have. Andy Reid likes smaller, shiftier wide receivers. Andy Reid likes guys who run 4.3. Rashee Rice doesn't run 4.3. Andy Reid likes smaller, shiftier wide receivers, more so than 6'4", 219-pound behemoths that look a lot like Terrell Owens on the field. Not exactly like Terrell Owens. Terrell Owens, one of my favorites of all time, just for all of the drama that would circle him. But the games aren't entirely dissimilar between Terrell Owens and Tetairoa McMillan. So you're telling me that the greatest offensive mind in football, Andy Reid, and the greatest quarterback in football, Patrick Mahomes, couldn't find a way to use a 6'4", 219-pound wide receiver with 10-inch hands who runs 4.55 40-yard dashes? I don't believe you. So I went ahead and just So this here is from Draft Buzz. And I know Draft Buzz maybe not the most reputable source out there, but I do like their notes on Tetairoa McMillan. Has remarkable positional versatility, thriving as both an X-wide receiver and power slot, with fluid movement skills rare for his frame size. Those things translate into an Andy Reid offense all the live long day, especially in the time early in the season should Rashee Rice find himself suspended for some period of time. Displays advanced route running prowess with diverse tree, particularly excelling on whip routes, crossers, and in cuts across the middle. Whip routes, crossers, and in cuts, who likes to employ those in their offense? It's a mystery to me. Um, And yeah, he's a good route runner. I wouldn't say he's a great route runner, but he's a good route runner. He's, I think, ahead of the curve for a rookie for sure. He's going to be able to get open in the NFL if Drake London can get open. I think that too, Tetairoa McMillan can get open. Demonstrates elite ball tracking ability and timing on deep throws, consistently winning contested catches with excellent body control. That's absolutely on film. And if you want to know something that would be just a heart attack for opposing defensive coordinators, guys, Xavier Worthy and Tetairoa McMillan on the field at the same time, and they're just running streaks. One of them's going to be open, and you've got the guy with the golden arm to deliver. Shows surprising fluidity and change of direction skills for his size, creating separation through technique rather than pure athleticism. I think that there is pure athleticism in there that can still be brought to the surface. The technique involved, I don't think that he uses speed fluctuations to the degree that he could. I think that he has sort of maybe falsely figured that he's a slow guy. But if he can run a 4.55, that's definitely fast enough to get open. That's definitely fast enough to have speed fluctuation play a part in your game. Possesses natural hands and expansive catch radius, making him a reliable target at all three levels of the field. Super important for an Andy Reid offense that appears at the onset of this offseason to be trying to make all areas of the field deadly again for Patrick Mahomes. Excels at finding soft spots in zone coverage and working back to the football on broken plays. That sounds very familiar. The Chiefs already have a guy that does that, but he's kind of old. Travis Kelce, right? Yeah, that's Travis Kelce's game. Travis Kelce, we believe, is playing his final season. Uses size advantage effectively in the red zone, particularly on back shoulder fades and high point situations. Patrick Mahomes has never had one of those. Displays improved yak ability with good vision and good enough strength to break arm tackles. I don't know how dangerous he's going to be on the yak in the NFL. I just don't know. I think that's one of the harder things to sort of translate from college to the NFL for wide receivers, because I think there's just such a chasm between college corners that can or can't tackle and then NFL guys who are counting on being able to tackle so they can keep bringing home those paychecks. Now, how realistic is this? I don't know. Guys, I had assumed Tetairoa McMillan was a top 10 pick for a very long time. Rumblings are rumblings. We won't know how true they are until draft night comes. But if the Kansas City Chiefs find themselves in sole possession of a Tetairoa McMillan come draft night, this offense goes from interesting to great googly moogly. That thing is juicy, real fast. That's all I have time for right now. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Kansas City Chiefs fans. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, consider hitting the subscribe button to stick around for more Chiefs content in the future. And as always, I hope to have you back for the next one.